Third-party presidential runs are long shots to begin with, but the group No Labels is preparing for an even more unlikely scenario. Officials with No Labels, which is trying to assemble a third-party ticket, are actually floating the idea of forming a coalition government if no candidate receives the 270 electoral votes needed to win. But here's the thing. This is exactly the kind of destabilizing scenario critics of No Labels have warned against. Scenarios that No Labels has previously called false rumors. So what's going on here? Well, former Congressman Conor Lamb and Charlie Dent are still with us. Charlie, when I read this news today, I was happy you were here because you and I have talked about No Labels, a third-party candidate. You've been open to this idea. But this coalition government, how would this even work?
Well, I don't know if they're really talking about a coalition government. What they're talking about is securing ballot access on all 50 states. Then there could be some kind of a fusion ticket, and their plan is to run a ticket that has a shot at winning. Now, there's always a possibility, of course, that the candidate might not get 270 electoral votes, and then that could cause some kind of negotiation with unbound electors, during the certification process in December. But let's be honest, many of the people who are critical of No Labels, are saying that No Labels is going to somehow spoil the race and it's going to elect Donald Trump. Truth is, the critics of No Labels fear competition. They fear choice. They say, oh boy, if we have too much democracy here, we're going to have we're going to lose our democracy. That's their argument. It's not a very good one because 2/3 of Americans don't want either one of these candidates. They think Trump is too crazy. They think Biden is too old. And neither of the parties are listening to what voters are telling them. That's their problem. No Labels is responding to the marketplace. They're trying to create some type of a centrist independent movement, which I think would be very healthy for this country. It is long overdue. And let's just see where the chips fall. That ship of an independent candidacy has already sailed. RFK Jr. is in the race. I see him polling at times at 20%. Cornel West is in. Jill Stein is in. So that ship has sailed. And that could have an impact on the Electoral College. We just don't know yet. We don't even have No Labels candidates yet to say how it will impact the race. But the opponents of No Labels say it's going to throw the race to Trump, which I just am not buying.
Okay, Charlie, I'm just going to say two things. Joe Biden's age, again, Donald Trump is essentially the same age, A. And B, one of the big criticisms about No Labels is that they lack transparency. We do not know what their intentions are. We do not know who they raise money from. And here we are having this conversation with, I don't exactly know what No Labels is trying to do here because they haven't laid it out clearly. Connor, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, it's not even a good name. I mean, you can't quite tell what they stand for based off the name No Labels. But look, here's my hope. My hope is that what they're doing is trying to get the Biden campaign to take moderate voters more seriously and put themselves in a position to negotiate, not after the election, but before. And I hope that people in Biden's orbit are already reaching out to No Labels and its leadership and saying, look, let's talk. Let's find out if there's a way to work together. Because at the end of the day, this is a unique election. This isn't a presidential election where if one of the candidates, Trump, wins, he could fundamentally alter or end democracy as we know it in the United States. We know no matter what problem you have with President Biden, he will never do that. And so I hope that the people involved in this No Labels effort have the responsibility and self-awareness to seriously think about the stakes. And if they're passionate about creating a centrist political movement, run a bunch of people for Congress. They can be very effective, exercising a legislative check on either party. But this presidential election is serious, and I hope they're really attuned to what's at stake.
And if they're passionate about making their case, Nancy Jacobson is welcome to join me on this program any night of the week. I'll tell you, Charlie, Nancy has been invited on this program for over 2 years. And besides telling me that her dog ate her homework and she's washing her hair tonight, she has given me every other excuse on God's green earth. Help me understand this. If the point of a third party is to give power back to Americans who feel stuck in this two-party system, and I get that, so many people do, why is the first idea to float a possible scenario where voters won't decide the outcome?
Well, I don't think that that's what they're floating. They're actually offering an insurance policy. They're not even yet committed to running a ticket. I mean, we don't know look, we think Biden and Trump will be the nominees. Things can happen that one of them might not be. And so they might pull the plug on this whole thing. And by the way, No Labels is a 501c4 organization. They do not have to reveal their donors. And if they do reveal their donors, the opponents of No Labels will attack those donors. And they're not going to allow that to happen. And they shouldn't allow it to happen. And frankly, many of the opponents of No Labels right now are going out there saying, boy, if there's a No Labels candidate, some governor or some senator, we're going to, if he has fingernails in his closet, we're going to find him and we're going to tear him apart. And so if they really want to have a conversation, that's not a great way to do it. These types of veiled threats and, I think, useless attempts at intimidation. But that's what they're doing. And then so they talk about dark money. Both political parties have 501c4s that support them. I don't hear any of them, Democrat or Republican, saying they're going to shut down theirs. But the No Labels 501c4 is some type of a human rights violation as far as they're concerned. But if they do reveal those donors, they will be attacked by these people, and they're never going to allow it to happen. And so, and look, at Ryan Clancy, he's the chief communications guy for No Labels. I encourage you to bring him on the show, Stephanie. He's very good. I've seen him on many shows.
But why wouldn't Nancy Jacobson then, who runs the organization, she's the one going to all the big Wall Street guys I know, getting the big checks. She's the one going to the Milken conference, convincing these guys that that's what the right thing to do is, follow No Labels, yet she's unwilling to go on television. That seems strange to me, but who knows?
Well, but the organization's willing to go on. But the organization's always willing to send people on. I know that. I see Ryan Clancy on all the time.
And you know what? Yeah. I'd like to talk to the boss.